most common questions couples ask me is, how do we stop being defensive? In this episode, I'll reveal what drives defensiveness, how you can stop it, so instead you can start connecting. Hey, I'm Julia Woods. I'm a coach and a trainer and the founder of Beautiful Outcome. I love helping couples connect. It is what I'm most passionate about. And the biggest killer of defensiveness, or the biggest killer of connection, is defensiveness. So in this episode, I'll share with you the 4 things that I experience cause the biggest amounts of defensiveness in our relationships and what you can do instead. The first thing is our love of being right. Now, if you're like me, I didn't think I really loved to be right. But when I began to look at what does wanting to be right sound like in me, I saw I have huge amounts of needing to be right and wanting to be right. It's an ingrained part of our survival system. We need to be right that a lion is going to attack us. We need to be right that the sound of a squealing car coming towards us is dangerous, right? Our survival system needs us to be right. So this is ingrained in us as a way of surviving in the world. But in a marriage, we're not trying to survive. This person that we married hopefully isn't threatening our lives. We're simply in a relationship because this person that we fell in love with, one of the reasons we fell in love is because they see the world differently than we do. They help open up new ways of thinking that's beyond what we think. But when we get in a conflict, when we trigger our fears and our doubts and our insecurities, our survival system kicks in and we want to defend our rightness. But the rightness is all about self-preservation rather than focused on us. The moment in marriage we move to self-preservation, we move away from building and developing us. This is what we're in a marriage for, is us, so that we don't have to be all self-sufficient, self-preserving. We actually enter into a partnership where 2 are better than 1. An example of this in my marriage is my husband and I have been fighting about the countertops. We aren't fighting anymore, but we were fighting. It was creating defensiveness for us. And together we decided that kind of the way our life circumstances are right now, there's some demands on me with work and he has more available time. So he has taken over the kitchen. He takes care of all of the cooking and all of that in the kitchen, and it has really become his domain. And for 30 some years of our life, it was my domain. So I have some things that I think I'm right about, one of which is clean countertops. It matters a lot to me. It literally creates a physical reaction in my skin when the countertops are dirty. I haven't really dug into that. Probably something I need to look at. But when I would go into the kitchen and he would have cleaned it all up, made us dinner, cleaned up the kitchen, and the countertops weren't touched by a washcloth, I would get so angry and I would tell him, I need you to clean these countertops. I was fighting for my own self-view of what I think I'm right about. But then I began to think about, is this conflict really worth it? Is this defensiveness that I keep defending my way, is it really worth the disconnection it's creating? And I decided to start looking at it from an us perspective. And what I know is that if it's really bothering me, and there's a way that I think it must be done to the point that I want to do it myself, then so be it. But I decided I didn't. I actually like the way it's working right now. And I'm able to focus more on work and have these lovely, amazing meals made for me and a kitchen cleaned up. If it really bothers me, I can wash the countertops, and I don't need to do it with an attitude or frustration or resentment or bitterness. When I can really look at it from an us perspective, he is doing a major service for us and the kitchen is his domain. Like his desk is his domain. Let him have his process and do it his way. Defensiveness went away and connection comes in. The second thing that drives defensiveness in us and as humans and blocks connection in our marriage is making it about you versus hearing them, right? So when I'm in a conversation with my husband, I want to make everything that he's saying about me. Even if he's saying it about me, I like to think it's all about me, rather than recognizing as humans what we actually are communicating is really usually about us. We're in a constant dialogue with ourselves. We're constantly talking to ourselves, even when we don't realize we're talking to ourselves about ourselves. And often when we don't want to look at something in ourselves, we begin to project it onto our spouse. When we're talking about something that's really happening in us, we're actually talking about ourselves, but we're making it sound like it's about them. And vice versa. When our spouse is talking to us about something, even when they're talking to us about something that they're seeing in us, it's more than likely something that might be going on in them, more so than what's going on in us, right? Just like my anger over the countertops, it was really more about me than something that's wrong with my husband. So we project our fears, our self-doubts, and our insecurities onto our spouse. An example of this is yesterday, my husband and I are working on a project together, and I was complaining and telling him that I really didn't think he was passionate about it. And we went around for about 30 minutes in this defensive battle of me saying, I just don't think you're passionate. And he's like, yes, I am passionate. And I'm like, I don't think you are. And yes, I am. And so what I began to discover last night is when I stepped back and I looked at it, what's actually true is I'm fearful that I'm not passionate or as passionate as I want to be. And so what I did was I was projecting my own fear. In order to convince myself that I wasn't the problem, I began to make it about his passion being the problem. And when I can acknowledge that what I'm actually looking at in him is really more about what I don't want to look at in myself, then all of a sudden we can have an honest, vulnerable conversation and we can connect. Now, in this situation, if your spouse is telling you something about you, would you just step back and consider, what if what they're so upset about that they're saying is about me? What if it's actually something going on for them? And how could I lovingly, neutrally get curious and invite questions about, can we talk about what's upsetting you so much? What is it that you're feeling? What is it that you're thinking? Is there something you're afraid of that's actually a fear you have going on for you? We can move out of defensiveness and into connection. And if you're pointing your finger at something in your spouse, look at how it might actually be more about you, which brings us to the third thing that drives our defensiveness, which is blame. The moment something isn't going the way we want it to go, we look for someone or something to blame. And we are sure that they're the problem. It's kind of like the saying, am I the drama? No, I'm not the drama. The truth is, whenever something isn't going the way we want it to go, we each have our own contributions. Even if your contributions are only 5% of the overall 100% of what's contributing to the current results, if you will take 100% responsibility for your 5% of the contributions, you literally can change the entire circumstances. This was true for my husband and I in finances. For years, we had defensive battles over finances. I was thinking I was right in the situation because I was the saver. And I was thinking he was wrong in the situation because he was the spender. So every conversation about money turned into blaming each other. He blamed me for being stingy. I blamed him for overspending. And as long as we were blaming, it was a constant battle of defensiveness. But once I began to slow down and decided I'm just strictly going to look at my contributions, our entire circumstances changed. We began massively improving our financial portfolio because I started seeing some significant contributions on my part. In the beginning, I would have told you I had no contributions. He was 100% of the contributions. But when I got off of my defensiveness and I started getting more neutral and curiously looking, I saw that I was contributing at least 75% to what wasn't working in our finances, and I had literally been blinded to it before. The Fourth, an overarching aspect of our defensiveness is most often we're fighting for our impact or the impact versus the intention. So this is common in most arguments, in most things that we are arguing about. One of you is fighting for your intention and the other is fighting for your impact. This is an example of this for my husband and I is the toilet seat. For years we fought about the toilet seat. He would wake up in the middle of the night and quietly go to the restroom. I would never hear a thing. And then I would get up later and go to the restroom and I would fall in the toilet because he had lifted the seat and not put it down. The next morning, even sometimes in the middle of the night, I was so outraged and made a little extra noise to try and get his attention. We would have a defensive battle. As I was fighting for the pain and suffering he caused me, as now I was wide awake and I had fallen in the toilet and sat on the disgusting rim. And he was fighting for his intention. He had been trying to not wake me up and he didn't want to clang the seat and he was trying to just stay half asleep while he went to the bathroom so he could get back to bed. As he fought for his intention and I fought for his impact, we were getting more and more disconnected. But when I could slow down and I could listen to his intention and think about that, like hold a space for he's trying not to wake me up, I can appreciate that. And at the same time, what wakes me up the most is when I fall in the toilet. So would he be willing to recognize I'd rather be woke up with the sound of the toilet seat than I would waking up falling in the water? And then we can stop fighting about it. I also can take responsibility and recognize that I'm married and I have a husband who uses the toilet differently than I do. And I need to take responsibility for what I want and need, which is a seat down. And I can have control over that too. All four of these things are the aspects of what drives defensiveness and blocks us from connection. If we will just slow down and start looking at where it is that we're trying to be right, and instead shift away from self-preservation to focusing on us. If we will stop thinking that everything is about us, even when our spouse is saying it's about us, could we just stop and recognize our human dynamic is that typically what we're communicating is probably more true about us than the one that we're communicating it to? Would we stop and recognize all we have power over is our contributions? And when we're in a battle, would we recognize one of us is fighting for intent and the other is fighting for impact? And if we can slow down and recognize which one we're standing for and listen for what the other one is sharing, we literally can turn defensiveness into connection, one conversation at a time. Thank you so much for joining me. Would you take a minute and share in the comments which one of these defensive reactions is the biggest for you? And if you appreciated what you heard, would you let me know that by giving this a thumbs up? And then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week. Hey, hon.
Yeah.
What do you think is
Let's talk about this toilet seat thing for a second.
Oh, okay. What do you want to tell me about the toilet seat?
Most men don't even lift up the toilet seat. So.
Oh, you're trying to help me not sit on a seat that has urine on it.
Exactly.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.